Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you. I've been away for a couple of days, but I am back, and I'm so glad to be back, and I'm glad that you're with me. Please join me on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Like and subscribe, and please click that bell, and pass the show on to as many people as you can. Like and subscribe, pass the show along, and click that bell so that when we come up live, we will come up and let you know that we're here. The Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. Please join us there, and of course, all things AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. That's right. They got a lot going on up in Minnesota. Oh boy, and we just love it, love it, love it. And I'm so glad to be with you today. We're going to be talking about the Supreme Court case, the Supreme Court decision that has not been rendered yet, but they're arguing what to do about mifepristone, what to do about this reproductive drug, and what to do about women and body autonomy. And mifepristone does much more than a. It's used for far more than abortions. And we need to talk about that. We need to talk about the fact that that pregnancy is one of the most, women are closest to death in their lives when they are having a baby. It is not an easy proposition. Maybe because it happens every day, we take it for granted. No, it's not something you need to take for granted. There are many women who die because the afterbirth doesn't come out, for example, completely. There are many women who die because they have unresolved miscarriages. Mifepristone can help resolve all of that and save a lot of lives. And when we look at maternal mortality in the Black community and in the Indigenous community, really at all-time highs, really in epidemic levels. We need to talk about that today. We're going to have Dr. Damon Arnold, who's the former Illinois Department head of the Illinois Department of Public Health, indeed one of the foremost public health advocates in the country, veteran and all of that, Harvard fellow. He's got tremendous credentials, but he is more than anything a man of the people. But let's start with election 2024. We are in the thick of things. And this segment is talking about third parties. Now it seems the Democrats are bringing people onto their team who are going to be able to launch legal challenges to keep Robert Kennedy and Cornel West and Jill Stein off of the ballots. What do you think about that? And this is at a time when the plurality of Americans are independent. The latest polls show between 25 and 27% of Americans are Democratic and Republican, equally split. But in the middle, 44% independent, and more Americans are embracing independence every day. Now you have a group, no labels. They're primarily Republican, but they might have an appeal to a whole lot of people because people are less partisan and they're more anchored in trying to find some solutions to their everyday problems. Groceries are too high, rent is too high, you can't afford to buy a house. More and more people find home buying unaffordable, educating their children unaffordable. There's a lot about America that's just not working. And as I continue, I'm sending all of our love and prayers to the people of Baltimore as they cope with this tragedy in which the Francis Scott Key Bridge was collapsed because of an accident. We don't know exactly what happened. The government was very quick to say that it was not committed by terrorists. We hope that that is true. But there's a lot of investigating that needs to be concluded in order for us to determine that that is true. We do know that thousands of people will be out of work. We do know that it will take years to rebuild that bridge. We do know that almost 850,000 cars go through that port. We do know that there will be a sugar shortage. So stock up on that. I'm not being paranoid. This is one of the great purveyors of the supply chain in the United States and in the United States of America. And if you wanted to kind of bring America to her knees, knocking out that port of Baltimore, well, it has done just that. And so the president has gotten involved. Secretary Buttigieg has gotten involved. Governor Wes Moore has gotten involved because it is a national issue. And we're going to be talking with people from Baltimore about that over the coming days. But let's talk about the legal challenges that we're seeing that could be presented to these third party candidates. How would you like it if you walked into the polls and you did not see Cornel West, and you didn't see Jill Stein, and you didn't see Robert Kennedy, if you didn't see someone who you wanted to see? How would that make you feel? Does that help to strengthen the republic? Is that very democratic? Well, that's something that the Democrats are doing right now, and we need to talk about that because a lot of people are in their feelings about a lot of things, and not being represented is really central to all of that. So, we've got attorney Mark Fancher from the National Conference of Black Lawyers, senior advisor to Cornel West, Dwight McKee, and Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds. You know, you really inspired this segment because when you were on with us last week, you were talking about what you're hearing from the people. I mean, and you know, what people don't realize about those of you who hold elective office is that once you're elected, you represent the people who didn't vote for you. And even if people were not inclined to vote for you, they look at you as their representative and they tell you what's on their minds. And they've been telling you what in this election cycle, Representative Reynolds?
Well, it's great to be on with you and this all-star panel. Let me say, so this is such a relevant topic for this 2024 presidential election that we're seeing a resurgence of third-party candidates because I think there's a lot of people, quite frankly, that are very, very disappointed with both Biden and Trump. And I'm going to be very candid when I say that because just like there's so many people who are very, very disenchanted with former President Donald Trump, and rightfully so, for his many terrible policies. What I believe was one of the worst presidents in the history of America. His 91 criminal indictments. I mean, you could go on, but we know that people rightfully are very disenchanted with former President Trump, and that's why you see so many people, even on the right, that don't like him. Not just Democrats, but then at the same time, there are a growing number of Democrats that have expressed disappointment with President Biden. Some of it because of his age, some of it more recently because of his lack of a strong position to come out in favor of a ceasefire to stop the genocide and the brutal atrocities, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza between Israel and Palestine. And there's a lot of people that are very, 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 particularly young people, young African Americans, Muslims, that are very disenchanted, that is growing in their chorus for a third party candidate because they won't support Trump, nor will they support Biden. So that leads us to this conversation about people wanting to have another option, whether it's a Jill Stein or Cornel West or Robert Kennedy Jr. There are many conversations that are taking place across the country at kitchen tables and in the streets, in the barbershops, and elsewhere about whether or not a third party is necessary to be president of the United States of America. So I think it's a very it's a sign of discontent. It's a sign of disappointment. It's a sign that neither leading candidate within the Democrat and Republican Party, both have secured their nominations, and will be the party's nominee. And so the question is, will there be enough people that mount a serious third party challenge? Personally, I don't believe so. And the reason why I say that is just based on precedent, based on history, that America currently, as it stands, is a two-party system. We could debate whether or not it's best, but that's where it is now. I've seen well-intentioned independent candidates, Green Party, Libertarian, you name it. It's only worked, maybe, I know it worked for Lisa Murkowski as an independent. It's worked for Bernie Sanders as an independent, but that's in an individual state. but there's never been a real independent candidate to emerge as president of the United States of America. So while I'm very intrigued and very interested in hearing the debate and the discussion and the dialogue, for me, practically speaking, it goes back to, it's either going to be Trump or Biden. And so while I'm very, much in the camp of disappointed with Biden, certainly when I'm in the never Trump camp, but I'm very hesitant to embrace a third party candidate because I believe it's only going to help ensure either a Trump or a Biden victory. So one, that's where I'm at. I'm very sensitive to the fact that one of those two are going to be the president, and I'm very practical in the sense that if we aren't careful, we're going to take away votes from one or the other and ensure one or the other is the president. And it's really based on 7 swing states. That's really electoral college math. So I'm very interested to hear the discussion. I think that until we strengthen our democracy, where it's not a 2-party system, then it's going to be very difficult for an independent third-party candidate to truly mount a way to win the electoral college. If it was based on the popular vote, that may be a different conversation because you could just win more votes. But if it's the electoral college and you need X amount to secure the victory, then that's going to be very almost impossible. So I do think that we have to vet our candidates to make sure that we're getting the best candidate to be the nominees of the respective parties. And what does that say about the Democrat and Republican Party if people are very disenchanted with the nominee? What does that say about the parties themselves if they elect a flawed candidate like Trump or someone who lacks enthusiasm and building momentum like Biden does? I mean, I don't know too many people. I'm a proud Democrat, lifelong Democrat. Too many say, I can't wait to go vote for Biden. Man, I'm so excited. I want to go block off. Let's volunteer. Let's make some phone calls. Block. I saw that with Obama, right? I even saw that with, people for Hillary. I haven't seen that for Biden, especially not in the second term. So, it is a reality that we have to face and have a frank, adult, candid conversations about and talk about the elephant in the room.
Well, do you think it is a good thing for Democrats to block people from tickets, block these candidates?
I don't, Santita, I thought about that when you posed that question. I've been pondering about it. I think that if I was president in the President Biden camp, I think I would be doing everything to win. I mean, I would be, trying to make sure that I looked at legal challenges and looked at everything to secure the victory. Right? I mean, we're this isn't, for class president. This is for the leader of the free world. So the stakes are high. So yeah, I don't blame them for what they're doing. Do I think it's good for democracy? I don't. I think that people should have a choice. I think that people should have the ability and the freedom to vote for that's what a democracy is, right? You have a choice and you can choose A, B, C, or D. I think that is good for government. I think that is good for democracy. The more choices that you have, the more people are able to exercise their choice. And I think if a person is a strong candidate, then they're not intimidated by another person because they're running on their record. And I'm saying, hey, I'm the best candidate for this. This is why I'm appealing to you. I think that it's good for democracy. I don't think it's good for President Biden. I think for President Biden, it's probably very problematic. It probably plays into Trump's hand because Trump has a real ceiling because there's so many people disenchanted. He can't get a majority. So if he can win with 46% of his base turnout, and then Biden, is splitting votes from young people that are disenchanted, progressives, Muslims, African Americans, Hispanics, they're saying, hey, I'm not in the camp of Trump, but I'm going to vote for Cornell. I'm going to vote for, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. No, I'm going to vote for Jill Stein. Then I think that makes the math more possible for Trump. So I think that Biden is strategic. He has some very smart people in his campaign that are very well-paid operatives that are pros, and they know that this is problematic for their reelection. And so they're doing everything they can to suppress these third-party candidates from emerging on ballots and from being able to take votes that he would likely get. They know that they're not likely going to vote for Trump, but if they undervote or they vote third party, then it's less likely that he wins. So selfishly, I think he's doing what's in his best interest. For our democracy, I think it's best to have these candidates on the ballot, and then you vet the issues. You have a more robust discussion about policies and governance. And I think it makes Biden have to be more accountable when he has to appeal to African Americans because you have Cornel West. I think that makes him more accountable. It's like they say competition makes innovation good. If you just have Apple has a monopoly, then they can have the highest prices and they can have crappy quality because they don't have to compete with anybody else. Well, if you have to compete, you have to sharpen your skills. You have to go and make gestures, and you have to reach out, and you have to do everything you can to appeal. So I think it's good for democracy to have Biden and Trump compete for votes so that they are stronger candidates, and then they're more accountable to the American public. So I do think it's best that these candidates are out there for the democracy. But I do think for Biden and his reelection efforts, I think that if I had the Biden head on, which I don't, I would be probably doing what he's doing, but not Biden. So I think that it's good that these third party candidates are out there. They're making Biden be more accountable, specifically to the African American community, because he can't. I don't want Biden taking the African American community for granted.
But if they're blocked from the ballot,
Yeah, that's why I'm saying I think it's not necessarily good that they are blocked for the ballot. Mm-hmm. I think that it makes him more sweat and have to compete and have to then come and talk to the Congressional Black Caucus, the Black Voters Matter, have to have the conversations with the NAACP and the Urban League and other Black voices, right? He has to, so he can't. There's always this. We have to be reminded we're not a monolith, right? We represent more, but we're always taken for granted because we are the most reliable vote for the Democratic Party, and so remember, they don't have to court us as much as they have to court the Hispanics and the Asians. I want African American votes to be courted because I want them to support pro-democracy voting rights legislation, the freedom to vote in the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. I want them to support the George Floyd criminal justice policing bill. I want them to raise the minimum wage. I want them to talk about access to healthcare and jobs. Therefore, I want them to come and have those conversations, and we have these demands. And then now he's more accountable because he's made these promises. Then we have to hold him accountable for. But if they're not there, if they're not competing for it, then they just say, "Well, where else you gonna go?"
That's what they're saying now. And Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, that's what they're saying now. And speaking of interesting things coming out of Texas, Dwight McKee and Attorney Mark Fancher, you got one of your fellow Texans, State Representative Reynolds. He's a teacher and Army veteran, North Richland Hills, Texas. Formerly named Destin Eby. He changed his name to literally anybody else, and he's running for president. Mark Fancher. I saw that and I said, wow. You can vote for literally anybody else if you choose. Mark Fancher, is it good for the Republic? Is it healthy for the Republic? Does it strengthen the democracy when the Democrats are fighting to push people off the ballot?
Well, I think it represents the ultimate in hypocrisy. If the Democratic Party is presenting itself as the last defense against fascism in the form of Donald Trump, and then in the process of purportedly trying to do that, they are engaging in fascist practices by shutting down people who want to participate in a democratic process. I think that speaks volumes about who they are and how serious they are, how sincere they are about trying to do the things that they say that they're trying to do. But I think that when this whole thing is considered, that it's important to step back a minute and consider some more fundamental questions. And that is the actual end game or contemplated end game of the people who are participating in third party efforts. It's possible to have unity of action without having unity of thought. And I think that for many of the people who are participating in third party efforts, there are certainly some whose objective is to honestly make an effort to try and win the presidency. That's what they hope to do. If not this time, then maybe next time. They're trying to build organizations and structures and possibilities for doing that. Then there are other people who are engaged in this process because it's their hope that while it's not reasonable for them to believe that they can win the presidency, that by mounting a serious challenge, that they can somehow impact the programs and policies and platforms and thinking of the people who do have a realistic opportunity to win. But then you have other people like myself who don't want a third party candidate to win the presidency because I think the presidency itself as an institution is corrupt and bankrupt. And anybody who actually occupies that position must assume the title as commander in chief of an empire. And I am fundamentally opposed to the empire. And so any third party candidate who became the president would immediately become my enemy. And so it has to be about something else. And that something else is basically to destabilize the empire. That's the end game that personally I choose to pursue. And that is to cause people to wake up, to have people who are engaged in this process, who are raising issues, who are pointing out the contradictions of the entire process, the entire system, who are moving people toward an ultimate conclusion that the entire system must be overthrown and that we do not have a democracy or anything resembling it, that what we have is fascism in sheep's clothing, and that we as people must construct something new that does really represent the democratic ideal. And I think that if you have that perspective, then what's happening now is a major success. And even the efforts that the Democratic Party is making now to attack third party candidates and block their access, that's a huge victory because it points out the contradictions of who they are more profoundly and more dramatically than those of us who are trying to show who they are could ever do with our rhetoric or with our arguments. They're demonstrating just how hypocritical they are, just how disingenuous they are through their actions. And I think that the more threatened they are by these third party efforts, the more they become panicked, the more desperate they become. And the more desperate they become, the more they expose themselves for who they really are. And I think it helps people to reach the conclusion that I know that they will reach at some point. It's always just a question of when they will reach it. They will reach the conclusion that revolution is really the only solution, and that what we have is really basically a charade. The sooner that people on a mass level come to conclude that, understand it, the better off I think we all are.
Dwight McKee, what do you make of this of this effort by the Democratic Party to legally block Cornel West and Robert Kennedy and Jill Stein and literally anybody else, this Texas citizen, from being on the ballot? What does that say? How do you think people will react to that?
Well, they're trying to legally block Donald Trump and the Republicans with all these selective prosecutions. I mean, you see a desperation and a fascism, as Marx said, in them that I think is probably unprecedented in American experience. Uh, I think that them trying to block the independents will only drive them not to Trump, but to be more resolute in them getting their candidates on, or many of them, if they are, if the Democrats are victorious and keeping them off the ballot, they are just going to sit out. They're not going to become Biden supporters for the most part. I think that that energy on the Democratic side should go into trying to appeal to, to that constituency that have real problems, real issues with them. Uh, they would best serve themselves by trying to understand where the dissension is coming from and trying to resolve that, and given those independents more options in the policy choices they are looking to make. But because they are so self-righteous and have this fundamental belief that their candidate has to be in charge and he is going to be the savior of the nation and of the world, and that they're doing the world a favor by taking anybody else out that don't agree with that, I think it's going to lead to their own self-destruction. And I totally agree with Mark in his analysis, and Brother Reynolds in his analysis, that it is a fundamental mistake that they're making. And I think it grows from arrogance and presumption.
How do you think it would play itself out, Dwight, after the election? Because we can see that the 2020 election, Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds and Attorney Mark Fancher, Dwight, that the election itself was not over in November of 2020. It kept on going. We're still living in we're still living, Representative Reynolds, not in 2020, because we're not back there. There was a lot that was unresolved.
Well, I don't think you have to wait till after the election. I think it's going to start at the convention. I think the convention itself is going to be exercise in dissension and chaos.
The Democratic
National Convention in Chicago this year.
Why do you say that?
I think it's going to start there. I think because that's where you're going to see a lot of this dissension played out. I think it's going to be not unlike the '68 convention, where where there's not involvement, there's going to be dissension. Where there is not democracy, there's going to be chaos. I think that the people who won't be able to get inside to get their point across are the people that's been disassociated in terms of having their policies expressed. I think all that is going to come to play at the convention itself. The effect it's going to have on the election itself, I think, is going to be catastrophic, as it will, particularly for the Democrats, as it was in '68 for the Democrats. And they end up losing that election because of the chaos that came out of the convention itself.
Many people think of Mayor Daley in Chicago in 1968 and his orders shoot to kill. But I was reading an op-ed piece by Jonathan Turley in which he said that Mayor Daley he made a Freudian slip. He said, quote, "The policeman isn't there to create disorder.
He's there to preserve disorder."
Is to preserve disorder. I had forgotten about that. Well, what did I know then? I was a baby. But then he continued, the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, has now added its own gem. The Democratic Party is not here to preserve democracy. It is here to prevent democracy. Is that what you're saying, Dwight?
That's exactly what I'm saying. And they have, in a funny sense, assumed that tone, that boss tone that Daley had. It's they don't have the same grit that so it plays a little differently. But the politics are basically the same. Is they want no contrary opinion that does not serve them and play into their assumption that they have to be in charge. And so I think Mark is right. I think that this is going to be more than anything an exposure of the hypocrisy of the Democratic Party. The Republican Party, we kind of know where they at. We know that they are fascists in their attitude and their disposition. The Democrats have been playing that they're something different, and they really are not.
Texas State Representative Reynolds, you've been in agreement with this. I mean, what is it that's resonating with you?
I think that Dwight and Mark are on to something. I think that, and I'm always going to be willing to speak truth to power, even if it even if it means exposing my own party, which I'm a proud member of. I'm a proud Democrat. I'm a chair of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, and I have advocated strongly for Democrats up and down the ballot.
But you can do that and still
that's what I'm saying. So
right?
that's what I was getting to. You stole my thunder. You're right. I can do that and still hold my own accountable. I'm not one of those people that's going to promote hypocrisy, right? Where you can, we can point it out in the Republicans and Trump, and then we excuse it if it's our side and Biden. No, we need to call it out, and we need to speak truth to power, even within our own ranks. That's the only way that we're going to get change, if we have accountability and transparency. And so I think Dwight's position where he says Biden should be appealing to those same voters and those same demographics that he's trying to exclude a third party candidate from being on the ballot from. I believe that he should be appealing to them with his policies, with his agenda. And so I'm not saying that I believe that the strategy is good to exclude these third parties from a democracy, from a big picture strategy. I'm only saying that I can understand as an elected official myself and a strategist why it's in his best interest, politically expedient to be reelected to do so. But
hold on. Is it in his best interest, or is it political expedience?
Political expedience.
Best interest. Yeah, because I don't know if it's in his best interest.
Yeah, the political expediency, right? The path to least resistance. But personally, I think that he should be appealing and reaching out, spending more time trying to do outreach than block these third parties. If he was doing what he needed to do, he wouldn't be worried about Cornel West or Robert Kennedy Jr. He wouldn't be worried about that, right? He would be appealing to those Palestinians and those Muslims and all of the demographics that have traditionally supported the Democratic president and nominee. That's what he needs to spend more time on, focusing on those kitchen table issues, hearing them, listening to their concerns, coming up with a plan that addresses their concerns so that he brings them back into the fold. That's what I would be. If I was advising him, I would say, hey, let's go over here and let's have this conversation. I'm not going to be tied to AIPAC. I'm not going to be tied to whatever is keeping me away from calling out this genocide. That, for one, there's a whole bunch of other things. I'm going to advocate for voting rights as a priority. I'm going to advocate for women's reproductive rights as a priority. So I think that he needs to lead from the front, and I haven't seen him doing that. So I'm not here with a Biden hat on saying, hey, he's the best. No, I'm saying that practically speaking, we still have a two-party system. Do we need to have more people at the table to have more accountability and a stronger candidate? I believe the answer is yes.
If your wife is looking at the milkman, the answer is to bring her more flowers. The answer is not to try to lock in the house. And that is what the Democratic mentality is. Yes. It's just that.
Yeah. It could be. Yeah. You're right. Pay more attention to your wife. Go send her some flowers, shave and put her some cologne, and buy her, court her, go to the gym.
See, I was going to say something, but I don't know if I can say anything after that.
Go ahead, Mark.
What have I done? Why am I here?
No,
Okay.
what I was going to say is that what really gets my dander up about all of this is that, you have very sincere and committed people in the Democratic Party. I know when I'm talking to Brother Reynolds, I know how sincere and committed he is, and he wants only the best, not just for his constituents, but for his people, for everybody else, and it works really, really hard to accomplish that. I know that. Let's just assume, for the sake of discussion, that Joseph Biden is also that type of a person, and I hesitate to say that with any degree of certainty because I don't know him. But let's just say, for the sake of discussion, that's the type of person he is. And let's just say that it is his inclination to do all of the things that Brother Reynolds said, which is to take a principled and moral stand on Gaza, to take progressive positions on a number of different issues. The problem that I have with the Democratic Party as an institution is that he's held hostage by it. That if those things are inconsistent with the agenda and the interests of the people who really do control that party, then he cannot do it, no matter how much he might want to do it. And if he tries to do it, they'll take him out. And I think that is the fundamental problem, that the people do not control not just the Democratic Party, the people don't control just the Republican Party, the people don't really control any of the politics in this country, or at least not the politics that the system recognizes. It's controlled by an empire. It's controlled by an oligarchy. It's controlled by powerful interests. It's controlled by the military industrial complex and all of their cronies. It's controlled by a few wealthy corporations and a few wealthy families and individuals. And they're the ones who set the agenda. They're the ones who dominate both parties. And the first rule for both parties is you will carry out the agenda that is in the best interest of those of us who are powerful. And if you don't, then there are serious consequences for you. And a derivative of all of that is that if there are people outside of those two structures who want to challenge those people who are very powerful, then the order goes out to, if not the Republican Party, then to the Democratic Party. You will destroy those people. We will not get our hands dirty. We will not let the public see us doing any of this because we set you up as people who are our masks, people who are our alter egos to do our dirty work for us. That's why we put you in the position that you're in, and you will do our dirty work for us. You will crush these bugs. Cornel West is out there talking all that stuff. Crush him. Kennedy looks like he's getting some traction. Crush him. Go out there and take care of business. That is your job. And that is fundamentally offensive. It's fundamentally corrupt. And it is why I continue to maintain that it is so vital. That should be the highest priority for people of goodwill in this country, is to get rid of it. I mean, we've been going along with this game for generation after generation. We continue to delude ourselves into thinking, oh, we can change it, we can reform it. If we get the right individuals and right people into office, if we elect the right president, then they can do the things. They are powerless to do it. You can put me in that position and I can't do it. If I tried to do what I wanted to do, if I were elected president, they'd kill me. And that's just not hyperbole. That's serious
real.
business.
That's real.
And so I think that, we just have to come to terms with that reality. And it is why I continue to say this, and people laugh at me when I say it. I'm not even convinced, as certain as everybody seems to be, that the nominees for these two parties are Biden and Trump. I don't know that ultimately in November, those are going to be the two names on the ballot. Mm-hmm. And the reason I say that is because there are real questions about whether those two individuals will be able to effectively carry out the agenda of the powerful people who run these parties. You know, you've got Trump, who's number one, somebody who's idiotic and who is an ineffective caretaker of the empire, who's not even willing to go along with basic ideas that they advance, like the necessity of NATO and things like that. I mean, he's problematic. He's a wild card, unpredictable and uncontrollable. And so, therefore, they've set him up so that if they have to take him out, they certainly can. If necessary, they can bankrupt him. If necessary, they can jail him. They can do all kinds of things at the last minute if necessary in order to get him out of the way. And so if it becomes apparent to them that they need to get rid of him, they will dispose of him with no questions asked, no problems. And likewise with Biden, you know, I think that if not through legal problems, then I think through just the confusion that's going to result. I think Dwight is absolutely correct. I think that at the convention, it will be total chaos. And if it looks from what happens there, that even if Biden emerges from all of that as the nominee, that he will be ineffective, that he will not be able to carry out the agenda of the capitalist empire, then they'll get rid of him too. They'll through manipulation, maneuvers that take place at the convention or afterwards, they'll get him out of the way and they'll replace him with somebody who can do the job.
You know what?
This is political reality.
Well, you know, it is political reality, and it's one that I lived. You know, that's why so many people didn't think Reverend would live through the campaigns because of what he stood for. And it was nothing but the grace of God that got us through. And then they got rid of us with great dispatch. But that's okay, you know, because you keep on working and fighting the good fight. But my question is now, what do you do with all of these people who support Cornel West and Robert Kennedy and Jill Stein? And I say that because I had a guest on my show who was very critical of the Black church and Black preachers. And during the commercial break, I got a call from my mother and from your mother, Dwight McKee, to hurry up and get this gentleman off of my show, because you are going to lose listeners, because Reverend so-and-so has got 1,000 members. Reverend so-and-so's got 10,000 members. Reverend so-and-so's got 5,000 members. Reverend so-and-so's on TV throughout the week. Do you know that when this man talks about their pastor, he's talking about them too? You don't want to lose them. Get him off the show now. And I'm wondering if that would happen because Americans are in another space now. I mean, Dwight, I think you made the point that it's unprecedented, and Representative Reynolds, that's what you're seeing. And Mark Fancher, I mean, I think you're tapping into the zeitgeist. Americans are in another place because we've never been here before. I mean, we're 400 years into the British part of this European project in the Americas, right? But we're also 200 plus years into this empire, which means you're always at an inflection point in an empire, a couple hundred years in. And there's a lot going on, Dwight. And I'm wondering, well, let me start with you, Representative Reynolds. I mean, because you are talking to these young people. You're talking to these Hispanic people. You got a rainbow who you represent, and folks are not feeling this. And I think that if you deny them opportunity, like as we have seen, I mean, AM 950 radio, my home station here, almost 20% voted uncommitted, 19%. If they had more time, I'm sure they would have gotten more votes. Look at what happened in Michigan. They said, we want 10,000 votes. They got 101,000 in 21 days. Something's going on out here, Representative Reynolds, and you are seeing it. As you're talking to people, are you not?
It's real. I mean, unless you live in a bubble or echo chamber, then you're blind to what's taking place. You're blind and deaf and naive. The reality is there's so many disenchanted, and that number is growing. So let's not ignore the problem. Let's not say, oh, what's wrong with them? Let's listen to self-criticism and let's say, hey, you know, there's a problem, whether it's perceived or not. the reality of it is I have to fix it. It is my responsibility to address the issue. That is what I think needs to be taking place. Not that there's not, don't pretend there's no problem. There's these problems are real and they're growing and they're manifesting into discontent, into uncommitted votes, into no votes. And another form of voter suppression is to make people frustrated where they don't vote at all. That's another form of voter suppression where they say not because of barriers and bulldogs and Jim Crow laws, but because we're disenchanted and we believe now our vote doesn't count, or there's so much confusion that I'm just going to stay home. Both sides are bad. We need to have real conversations. And I think that Dwight and what you're saying about the convention, unless problems are resolved, there will be chaos. There will be massive protests from Palestinian sympathizers and those who believe that America is complicit with the genocide and the tens of thousands of people that are dying every day from this war that is should stop, right? That there should be a release of hostages, there should be a humanitarian relief, and there should be a rebuild, not just there in Palestine, but right here in America, in our backyard, where you have so many people who are suffering from mental health and victims of the criminal justice system and no health care, Black women leading maternal deaths. And there are so many other issues. So yeah, it should be a wake-up call. It should be a wake-up call and a call to action. And what I want to do, Santita, is challenge the listeners to be engaged. Like, let's not just, we've identified that, yes, there are problems and they exist, but what are the solutions? One solution is, let's make our voices heard. Like, we don't have to wait till November. November is a place where we can cast our vote, and everyone should. No one should sit this one out. This is too important. But we don't have to wait till November to be engaged. We can make our voices heard now through making our voice heard through members of Congress, through our representatives. We can write letters. We can use our social media platform. We can make good trouble, right? We don't have to sit on the sidelines and just, hey, complain. We can, I want to mobilize action. I was so proud of the young people after George Floyd's death when they protested and marched for criminal justice reform. I was so proud with women and others who marched after the decision gutting Roe versus Wade, and they demanded action and codifying Roe versus Wade. And then they had wave elections based on that. I want to see another movement, but it's centered around making sure that our voices are heard. Mm-hmm. That's how we make change. And we come with I said this before, we come with a Black agenda, a progressive agenda, whatever we want to call it, that addresses these concerns: voting, jobs, climate, whatever it, healthcare, whatever it is. Those are the things that I want us to do, and says, hey, we're going to go with the candidate that most aligns with these issues. And guess what, Biden? If you don't, then we're not going with you. I think that's how we move the needle, and that's how we bring action into results. I want results. I don't want to just see the worst fear I have, Santita, personally, is to see another Trump presidency. I stay up late at night. I don't worry about a lot, but that would be a colossal failure on our watch, because you're going to have so many justices, so many judges, so many policies that are going to be, to me, that are going to be generational.
Well, hold that thought, because I only have about 4 minutes left. Okay. No, because you're bringing up a really salient point. Is that your worst fear in 2 minutes, Mark Fancher, another Trump presidency?
Oh, no, not at all. Because I see the world a little bit differently. I think that Trump represents a threat to people who are accustomed to being comfortable. People who are accustomed to having their interests met and satisfied. For the people who are marginalized and oppressed and excluded and discriminated against, that's already their reality, and it will continue to be their reality, whether it's Biden or whether it's Trump. It doesn't matter. The police are still going to be on the rampage through our communities, knocking heads locking people up. People are still going to be incarcerated when they shouldn't be. People are still going to be poor. People are still going to have difficulties and problems. People are still going to be watched and surveilled no matter what. The only difference is that if Trump is in office, then everybody's going to have that experience. And I think that that's where a lot of the mass panic comes from.
Dwight McKee, couple of minutes.
I agree with Mark. I don't operate in that kind of fear because I know that whoever's going to be there, Black people are trying to wait to survive, and because we've been overwhelmed for the last 400 years by the worst for the most part. And government has always been an enemy of ours. But I just think for the sake of politics, the Democrats who would be in a position to help us just a little more and not to harm us as much, which is what the option is. I don't think they're going to help us much. I just think they won't harm us as much. Is that, but they have to make a hard choice. I think that Biden has to study Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant committed adultery. He had the option of buying a $4 million ring or looking at a $40 million divorce. He bought a $4 million ring. He was willing to negotiate his own interest and make a proper decision by courting the person that he needed to hold on to. And I think that's what Biden has to do for the independence, is to court the people, the people he's trying to hold on to.
And
I think the strategy to try to negate them is a big mistake.
And leave it to Dwight McKee to give us that final word. I'm going to give you the last 30 seconds for Representative Reynolds. Redeem the show.
Santita, I think this is a great discussion. This is going to be ongoing. This is not an elevator pitch where we have a quick solution based on 30 seconds. So we need to continue to have this discussion. We need to be very open and transparent and have real, meaningful conversations with people who aren't just echo chambers for President Biden. Have dissenting opinions, but then focus on solutions. How are we going to come together to make a change so that we can protect and preserve our democracy and the hard-fought gains that we've made and moving the ball forward, not going backwards where the MAGA movement wants to put us at.
$4 million ring, $40 million divorce. What else can you say? And of course, Mark Fancher said, I have nothing to say behind that. No mas, no mas. I'm done. Texas State Representative Ron Reynolds, can't wait to have you here in Chicago for the Democratic.
Thank you, Ronnie. See you when you get here. Looking forward to
it. I can't wait for you to make good trouble, Mark Fancher. I love it. I love it. I love it. I can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait. And Dwight McKee, always in the center of the storm, the eye, moving things around. And yet he's so quiet. I love you all, everybody. Next hour, let's talk about what's happening at the Supreme Court. What's happening with women? What's going to happen with mifepristone? Will they have an opportunity to take this drug that's for more than abortions, everybody? It's much more than that. And how are we going to really resolve the maternal mortality rates in the United States, which are worse for Black people, but really they're the worst in the industrialized world for everybody? Something's off here. Are we pro-life? Really? Let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio. Back in just a moment.